What's the right thing to do? It sounds like such a simple question, doesn't it? But the answers, well, they shape our entire world, from our own lives to the very laws of our nations. So today, we're going to dive into one of the most fundamental tensions there is, the clash between the law, our own personal morality, and the long, hard fight for civil rights.
All right, let's get right to the heart of it with this question. Should the law be able to tell you what's okay and not okay in your own private life, just because a majority of people think it's immoral? This is not just some philosophical game. This is the very question that has been at the center of huge battles for freedom and equality for centuries.
You know, this whole debate just blew up in Britain back in 1957. It was because of something called the Wolfenden Report, which looked into, among other things, laws around homosexual offenses. And its conclusion was a bombshell for the time. It basically said that what consenting adults do in private, even if some people find it immoral, is simply not the law's business. That one line lit the fuse for a massive philosophical showdown about what law is even for.
So how do you even start to tackle a question that huge? Well, one of the most influential approaches basically turns it into a math problem. Let's take a look at a philosophy known as utilitarianism. And this is one of the main guys you can thank for it, Jeremy Bentham. His whole thing was trying to make law and morality less about, feelings or old traditions and more about one single, simple, rational idea. And here is that big idea. Utilitarianism is all about the outcome. You add up all the good stuff, all the happiness, and subtract all the bad stuff, the suffering. The most just choice? It's whatever creates the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. The majority's happiness is the goal. But, and this is a huge but, what about the minority? What happens to their rights in that big happiness calculation? That exact problem is what really bothered another philosopher, a guy named John Rawls. And he came up with this really powerful alternative, a fascinating thought experiment to help us figure out what a truly just society would even look like. Okay, so play along with this for a second. Imagine you get to be an architect for a whole new society. You get a completely blank slate. You and a group of others get to write the fundamental rules for how everything works. But of course, there's the catch, a huge one. As you're making all these rules, you have absolutely no idea who you are going to be when you're dropped into the society you're designing. This is what Rawls called the veil of ignorance, and he means you don't know anything about yourself. You don't know if you'll be rich or poor. You don't know your race, your gender, your nationality. You don't even know if you'll be naturally smart or athletic, or what your religious beliefs will be. All your personal biases, poof, they're gone. So here's the key. From that position of total uncertainty, not knowing if you'll end up on top or at the very bottom, what principles would you pick? Would you really gamble? Would you design a system that might make you super rich, knowing it could just as easily leave you powerless and poor? Probably not, right? Rawls says, no way, you wouldn't gamble. You'd play it safe. And you'd insist on two main principles. First, the liberty principle. Pretty simple. Everyone gets the same basic rights and freedoms, period. Your rights can't be sacrificed for someone else's happiness. And second, the difference principle. This one says, okay, you can have some inequality, but only if the whole system is set up to benefit the person who's worst off. See how different that is? Instead of maximizing happiness for the group, this is all about protecting every single individual, especially the most vulnerable. And at the absolute heart of this is a pretty radical idea. Think about it, being born super smart or incredibly athletic. You didn't earn that. It's just luck, like winning the genetic lottery. So Rawls says a just society would agree to see those talents as a kind of common asset and to share the benefits around so that everyone gets a chance to live a good life. So we've got these two big clashing philosophies. How does this actually play out in the real world? Well, let's circle back to that debate that the Wolfenden Report kicked off, because this is where the rubber really meets the road. This became known as the Hart-Devlin debate. On one side, you had H.L.A. Hart, a philosopher who championed individual liberty. On the other, Judge Patrick Devlin, who argued that a shared morality is the glue that holds society together. He famously said that the suppression of vice is as much the law's business as the suppression of subversive activities. You can totally hear the echoes of our two philosophies here, right? Devlin's argument for the majority sounds an awful lot like utilitarianism, and Hart, fighting for individual freedom, aligns perfectly with the kind of principles Rawls would later argue for. Now, it's really easy to think of this as some dusty old British debate from the 1950s.
But I promise you, this is not ancient history. This exact conflict between the majority's morality and an individual's liberty is a defining fight in civil rights struggles all over the globe right now.
70. That's not a historical figure. That is how many countries today still treat same-sex relationships as a crime. This is the present reality for millions of people, and it's a direct consequence of laws designed to enforce one specific moral code on everyone.
And the consequences are just devastating. We're talking about the death penalty in 11 countries. In over half the world, you can be fired from your job just for who you are, with zero protection. Governments that won't let transgender people have an ID that matches who they are. And get this, a quarter of the entire world's population believes that just being LGBT should be a crime. This is the real, human cost of the debate we've been exploring. And all of this brings us right back to where we started. It forces us to see that these aren't just abstract theories in a textbook. These are choices with life and death consequences. And it brings us back to that powerful challenge from Rawls. So, the final question is for you. If you were behind that veil of ignorance, if you didn't know who you would be, your sexuality, your gender, your beliefs, your place in society, what rules would you make? Would you risk being persecuted for who you are? Or would you build a society founded on liberty and justice for everyone, especially the most vulnerable? What kind of world would you build?